And there. Okay. There we go. So I'm just gonna hop right into it. Okay. Um, so the very first thing I want to talk about is, since I didn't really talk about the whole entire, I didn't go over Secretary of State Marco Rubio's statements about him hosting Israel and Lebanon. Um, and so like I know there were some of the talks over the weekend and like yesterday as well. Um, and I know it's happening in Washington D.C. For like um at the all parties wanted to talk to. This was to get all parties talking at the table. Um, I know, but for some background, this is the first talk between Israel in decades, about 30 years. Um, they've been a highly contentious relationship. Like 1955, the Israeli government forbid Lebanese Lebanese citizens from having contact with other Israelis. Um, the current president Joseph Aoun came into power in 2025. There was a peace pact in like 1949, non-aggression pact until 1967. 1982, Lebanon had a civil war. 1983, Lebanon acknowledges Israel as a real country. 1933, along with other Arab countries, part of the peace negotiations with Israel and Palestine, and that's the last time I talk. Um, they've been highly contentious since October 7th. And Hezbollah joined in. They said they joined in support of Palestinians. Um, I know that Trump did also pressure the Prime Minister of Israel to have talks with Lebanon. He asked Israel to actually pause all attacks. Um, Israel just scaled down the attacks, but they continued to gain ground. Over 3,000 Lebanon individuals have been killed from Israeli attacks. Plus, hundreds of thousands of people cannot move because they're moving up on land, and they even by Israel's own claims, defense minister said that they can't come home until it's demilitarized. So I do have a couple clips that I lined up for this. And they're helps if I actually move. And we're going to make sure the volume is actually working. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can put a noise gate on this real quick, because like this is actually very annoying to do. Let me see. And we're going to peel that back a bit. We're going to do that. Also, that's oh, there we go. And Okay, there we go. I think that's much better.
Thank you.
Will there be further talks with Iran? Secretary, can we see a ceasefire between
Okay, hold. Okay, I'm not going to critique that. I'm going to be nice. Also, that was just more me. What I meant by nice is that I was wondering if the person has a stabilizer. That's all I was thinking.
Is it a signal that the U.S. is fully engaged?
Can we
Thank
see
you.
a ceasefire soon between Lebanon and Israel?
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. We're very honored to be joined by two countries that the United States wants to have strong relations with, and we're obviously very happy to serve in this facilitating role. This is a historic opportunity. We understand we're working against decades of history and complexities that have led us to this unique moment, and the opportunity.
Okay. Let me see if I can note that.
Here, I know some of you are shouting questions about ceasefire. This is a lot more than just about that. This is about bringing a permanent end to 20 or 30 years of Hezbollah's influence in this part of the world, and not just the damage it's inflicted on Israel, the damage it's inflicted on the Lebanese people. We have to remember the Lebanese people are victims of Hezbollah. The Lebanese people are victims of Iranian aggression. And this needs to stop. And so our hope here, and I know this will be a process, okay, all of the complexities of this matter are not going to be resolved in the next 6 hours, but we can begin to move forward to create the framework where something can happen, something very positive, something very permanent, so that the people of Lebanon can have the kind of future they deserve, and so that the people of Israel can live without fear of being struck by rocket attacks from a terrorist proxy of Iran. So that is the hope here today. That is what we are beginning to work. We are joined by excellent people who will be in a position to obviously take this back to.
Also, this is very interesting. Like, so that's like the first time I've actually heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio speak, and I'm used to more of like that. Everything he just said felt very politician, which is like whatever. He's a politician, but like I'm giving him kudos because it's more of like Secretary of Defense and Press Secretary both seem to be much more inflammatory and that stuff, and maybe Marco Secretary of State is at other time. But it's very interesting to compare the tones of all the different people in President Trump's case. So it's very intriguing. I'm not saying like I'm not saying that his word is gospel because I understand there might be parts that are lying by omission, things taken out of context. I will fully realize that I do not know a lot about like Lebanon besides like the full few bullet points that I just said. But it's very
Respective capitals. This is a process, not an event. This is more than just one day. This will take time, but we believe it is worth this endeavor, and it's a historic gathering that we hope to build on. And the hope today is that we can outline the framework upon which a permanent and lasting peace can be developed, so that, as I said, the people of Israel can live in peace, and the people of Lebanon can live not just in peace, but the prosperity and security that they deserve. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Press. Go out the back door. Out the back door. Thank you, Press.
And so there's that. So that was very I also have this by US Today because US Today seems a lot of times.
Following the negotiation between Israel and Lebanon, we have the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Yechiel Michael Leiter, here to give a brief update. He will start with a short statement in English, following a short statement in Hebrew, and then we will open it up to a Q&A, very quick, 2 or 3 questions. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Talks began with a statement, very encouraging statement, Secretary of State Rubio. I was honored to sit around a negotiating table with His Excellency Michelle Issa, United States Ambassador to Lebanon, and to Her Excellency Nada Hamadi, the Lebanese Ambassador to Washington. We discovered today that we're on the same side of the equation. And that's the most positive thing we could have come away with. We are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah. Lebanon is under their occupation, and we are suffering from their constant barrages of missiles and terror attacks trying to cross our border. We talked about a number of things, and most importantly, the vision, the long-term vision, where there'll be a clearly delineated border between our countries, and where the only reason we'll need to cross each other's territory will be in business suits to conduct business or in bathing suits to go on vacation. We made it very clear that the security of our civilians is not up for negotiation. That is understood by the government of Joseph Aoun. And I must say, this was a victory for sanity, for responsibility, and for peace. Because the head of Hezbollah warned the government of Lebanon yesterday not to participate in these talks. And the government of Joseph Aoun bravely said no to Hezbollah. And this is the beginning of a very strong and fortified, consistent battle against Hezbollah. They are weakened as they've never been, and together we'll continue to rid the threat of this Iranian proxy, which is so malign and so malignant in the region. כמה מילים בעברית?
אפשר אולי רק לכמה אפשרות העברית?
צהריים טובים, השגריר ייתן עכשיו הצהרה בעברית.
צהריים טובים. אני חייב לומר שהיו היום שיחות מצוינות, באווירה מצוינת. אני חושב שאפשר לומר שהיה ניצחון מוחץ היום נגד החיזבאללה. אנחנו באותו צד, העם הלבנוני והעם הישראלי, ממשלת ישראל וממשלת לבנון, אנחנו באותו צד. צריך למגר את הרשע הזה של חיזבאללה מארץ הארזים. ואנחנו מאוחדים.
My only problem with is like I'm not going to. Or is no one going to criticize Israel's actions of attacking civilian infrastructures, hurting so many people, and like I mean beyond like people have 3,000 people died. Hundreds of thousands of people were moved because of Israel's force. Like that's one, like let's just say for the sake of argument that Hezbollah is exactly as terrible as the group as they're saying. You're still hurting civilians in pursuit of that. Like blind, it feels like blindly. Are you not going to even be like, hey, we could react to this better or have more negotiations before this point? And it's like Israel even promising to talk about like how paying money, money's not gonna solve anything, but to at least build the infrastructure so people can move back. And I know money is not ever going to ever be exchanged for human life because those are no money can equal those.
וביכולת לעשות זאת. דיברנו על האפשרויות, דיברנו על החזון לטווח ארוך, לראות את לבנון משגשגת ואת הגבול שבינינו, גבול קבוע, מכובד, שעוברים הלוך ושוב בגבול הזה רק עם חליפות מחויטות כדי לעשות עסקים, ועם אולי בגד ים כדי לנפוש בחופים של שתי המדינות. כמה שאלות?
Yeah, אנחנו נעשה, I'm sorry, first question, Mike Wagenheim, I-24.
Ambassador Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News English. Is there something specific your Lebanese counterpart said today to give you optimism that the LAF will really begin to take hold in southern Lebanon and disarm Hezbollah? And also, conspicuous by their absence today were the French. Did Israel make a concerted, active effort to keep the French away from these negotiations?
Well, I hope we won't have to make a concerted effort, but we certainly don't want the French anywhere near these negotiations. We'd like to keep the French as far away as possible from pretty much everything, but particularly when it comes to peace negotiations. They're not needed. They're not a positive influence, particularly not in Lebanon. What gives me hope is the fact that the Lebanese government made it very clear that they will no longer be occupied by Hezbollah. And Iran has been weakened. Hezbollah is dramatically weakened. This is an opportunity. This is the first time our two countries are sitting together in over 3 decades. Let's feel the moment. Let's enjoy the moment. And we enjoyed it together. We had a wonderful exchange of over 2 hours. There's a joint statement that's coming out, a statement where the ambassador expressed her government's position, where I expressed my government's.
I'm just looking into, like, it feels very, very left side of the fields to actually, like what did France do? I'm chuckling because I'm just like, I do that as a default reaction to a lot of things. Huh. Oh, France helped create Lebanon. Okay, that makes sense.
Position, and we're going to take it from there.
Please.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Ambassador. Rahim Rashidi or Mr. Kurdi, sir. I have two quick questions. What impact could the peace agreement with Lebanon have on the
Really? Like, no, I was looking into the demographics of, like, Lebanon, and I didn't actually realize what languages they spoke. Huh. That's interesting.
region and particularly on Iran? Second question, is there any agreement among you two against militias in the region and including Hezbollah in Lebanon?
I didn't understand the second question.
Second question, do you have any agreement with Lebanon to against militias on the region? In Iraq?
Well, first of all, on the first question, it's imperative that there's a complete delinkage between Lebanon and Iran. Iran is the malign influence in the region and around the world, and Hezbollah is their proxy next to Israel. It's like a front operation of Iran against Israel. And now is the opportunity.
That's very, very intriguing, working in a front to Israel. Wow, that language is very, very condemning. Okay. So, like, no, that I'm more surprised at how much they revealed their. Well, they probably already revealed their hand much before this, but, like, that was very, very clear. That statement alone. Affront is a very, very particular word. Like, wow. Okay. I would never call a group of people in front to me, but wow. Okay.
To push them back because they're as weak as they've never been. So there's a imperative to maintain that delinkage. In terms of agreement with Lebanon, we're working on the agreement on every front, on the security front and on the civil front, to try to achieve together a complete peace treaty that the moment we have the security issue solved, we can take the peace treaty and embark on a harmonious relationship like we have with the other Abraham Accord countries.
I'm sorry, Nathan Gutman, Kan 11.
בעברית בבקשה, מהו השלב הבא, אדוני השגריר? מה קורה אחרי השיחות האלה?
היו כמה הצעות, המלצות.
I will say that I think it's awesome that there's so many languages. I find languages so beautiful. They have their own tone, timbre, different temperance. I'm trying to think of the word. Beat of the language itself. And I think it's amazing there's such variation in the world. I also, like, I know that's a little bit, but I think I'm happy that there's multiple languages being used during this interview because it lets other parts of the world be able to discuss in this conversation. I'm used to, and I understand a lot of American issues might just make it more complicated there, but I'm used to a lot of American interviews just being in English. So that's always beautiful to see.
ניקח את ההמלצות האלה לממשלות שלנו, אני אקח אותם כמובן לראש הממשלה,
Okay, there's no subtitles for this.
נתניהו, לממשלה, השגרירה חמאדי, תעשי זאת עם
יכולת לפרק את חיזבאללה מנשקו, הצד הלבנוני.
הם הביעו את הרצון העז, הפעם באמת לפרק את חיזבאללה מנשקו. ולגבי הפסקת אש, אנחנו עוסקים רק בדבר אחד, וזאת הובהרתי היטב. אנחנו עוסקים בביטחון תושבי מדינת ישראל. מה שיבטיח את ביטחון המדינה, נעשה. מה שלא יבטיח, או יעמיד בסימן שאלה ביטחון אזרחי ישראל, לא נעשה.
Last question, Mark Stone.
Hello,
Ambassador
Leiter, Mark Stone from Sky News. Three brief questions. First of all, can you give us a sense of, put this moment into context for us? You're talking about Israelis going on holiday to Lebanon and the other way around. I mean, that is extraordinary. So put this in context for us. Secondly, when will Israel cease fire against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon? Because at the moment, the fighting is ongoing. And lastly, the Lebanese ministers have told us that in a sense Israel is undermining what their effort is, which is they are calling for Hezbollah to disarm their.
Thank you for. I'm happy that's
calling for dialogue. They say they're doing everything they can, and that you're undermining things by continuing to fight in the south.
There may be some ministers that say some things for the publicity purposes, but the Lebanese know very well that they would not have been able to move into a new era of peace were it not for the fact that we've degraded Hezbollah. There would be nothing to talk about if it wasn't for the fact that,
that statement is. Ow, say puts a sour taste in my mouth. It puts all the blame on the. Like, I'm not saying Hezbollah's a good group or bad group, but all the blame on them. Like, it's not owning that Israel is not helping to de-escalate the situation. And there's so many ways you could, like, say, communication disruptions because the area's in the conflict zone. There's so many different things you could do this, but nope, all the blame. 100% them. There's nothing that Israel could have done. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Nasrallah, for example, who talked about Israel being nothing more than a spider web, is now living among the spiders. We've degraded Hezbollah, which has enabled Lebanon and the government of Joseph Aoun to take bold steps into direct negotiations with Israel. And that's the context. That's the change that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have brought across the region. With the degrading of Iran, this malign and malignant entity that's trying to destabilize the entire region, there is now the opportunity to degrade its proxies as well, to move them out of their horrific occupation of another country, and to move into an era where Lebanese and Israelis can live side by side in peace. And yes, vacation in each other's countries. It's not a pipe dream. It's a reality that can really happen in our lifetime.
When will you stop fighting in Lebanon? When will you stop firing missiles at the Lebanese civilian infrastructure? I guess that's their question.
I want to push back on your question.
Okay.
Israelis don't wake up in the morning and look to fire missiles across the border. The missiles are being fired at our civilians. That will be put a stop to. We will not allow a terror organization to continually fire missiles into our population centers. That has to be understood by anybody asking such a question. The Lebanese understand that. I hope the media will as well.
Do you think...
Okay, I'll try to finish this up as fast as possible.
Is there another meeting planned?
I think that's is there another meeting plan.
He said to people that it will be in a few weeks in Washington.
A few weeks in Washington?
Yeah, they're going back to the government and they're continuing.
Okay. So I'm doing my basic, the same general spiel again. If you're on Twitch, please, if you Twitch Turbo, you will not get ads. If you use Amazon Prime or subscribe to my channel, you will not get ads. I will be having a 2-minute and 30-second ad. Thank you for everyone who sticks through the ad, and thank you. Oh, I realized I just muted. Okay, next section is going to be talking about the Democrats are going to try and impeach Trump. And I'm going to give the rundown of there's 2 different ways to do this. One is by the Democrats doing themselves, the other ones are Trump's cabinets doing it. And so the 25th Amendment, Section 4, the Vice President and majority of the cabinet can say that the president is, unquote, unable to discharge powers and duties of the president. Next step is the president has an option to contest that statement. I don't know why I said stable. Sorry about that. Next step after that is the vice president, if they do not change their mind or back down from this, then goes to Congress, and both sides of the chambers have to, with 2/3 vote, have to agree to impeach the president. 290 votes for the House if there's 435 sitting members of the House, and 67 votes for the Senate. No president has ever been impeached in both chambers. And this is coming from the House Judiciary Committee ranking member Jamie Rakeson. He's introducing a 10-page bill, 50 Democrat co-sponsors, and at the same time all of this is going on, there's 6 articles of impeachment against Pete Hegseth as well. Oh, and we're going to... There we go.
Onto the scene in the... I'm joined now by Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman, thanks for joining me.
There we go.
It's great to see you, Ryan.
So a few days ago, you and I had spoken about the 25th Amendment, which has kind of surged onto the scene in the aftermath of Donald Trump basically threatening genocide against the entire Iranian population. You had actually discussed the issue with the Democratic caucus. Can you explain what happened in that discussion?
Well, it was an educational session and the beginning of a strategy discussion. It was really a terrific dialogue that we had. But I explained the language and the structure and the history of the 25th Amendment, which a lot of people are not familiar with. It was added to the Constitution in 1967. Senator Birch Bayh was the one who promoted it heavily, but he was working closely with Senator Robert F. Kennedy, whose brother, President John F. Kennedy, had been assassinated 5 years before. But there was a lot of discussion about problems of succession, continuity, stability in government. And so Section 1 of the 25th Amendment is about filling a presidential vacancy with the vice president. This Section 2 is about filling a vice presidential vacancy by way of nomination by the president and then concurrent majority vote in the House and the Senate. Section 3 is, I think I mentioned to you before, the colonoscopy provision, which allows for a voluntary temporary relinquishment of the powers of the office by the president to the vice president in the event of, surgery, anesthesia, or for any reason. And then at the point at which the inability to serve ends, then the president can just attest to that and take the power back. But what America's been talking about is Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, which is the part which says that the vice president and a majority of the cabinet can decide the president is unable to successfully discharge.
And I'm just going to go. And also, I was just curious because I just looked into it. The vice president, if the president is indisposed or removed, the vice president, when he becomes president, he will be he basically can nominate a new person to take his seat, and then both sides of Congress, the House and the Senate, by a simple majority can confirm that new vice president in.
Charge the powers and duties of office, and that could be for medical reasons, it could be for physical, mental, psychological. The
I
president.
believe the last time this has happened was during George W. Bush Jr., where he had a surgery and the vice president took the helm.
Could go missing. Who knows? It could be any number of things. And then they would have the power to transfer the power of the president to the vice president. And that lasts until the inability ends or the president shows up and attests that it's okay. And at that point, it would take a 2/3 requirement of the House, 2/3 vote in the House and 2/3 vote in the Senate to repudiate a presidential declaration that he was actually fit. But what I've been pointing out is that the 25th Amendment also says the vice president can do the same thing with a majority of a body set up by Congress. So it's a way of bypassing the cabinet and saying Congress can set up a body. And I've introduced legislation before back in 2017 and 2020, which I'm introducing again this week, to set up a permanent, ongoing body that would be there in the event of a problem with this or any other president.
Okay, so in terms of this body,
What? Okay, I just jump scared myself. But yeah, no, and this is the member of Congress that is starting trying to encourage the 25th Amendment. He created a 10-page bill for it.
the legislation moving forward, does that require a simple majority in the House, and does it have to exceed the 60 vote threshold in the Senate? Is it something that just the House unto itself can create? How does this work?
No, this is of statutory creation, so it would require a vote by the House, a vote by the Senate, and a presidential signature. But again, this is not targeted at any one particular president. There's no reason anybody should object to it. The 25th Amendment itself calls for the creation of such a body. It's in the Constitution itself, saying the vice president and majority of the cabinet, or the vice president and a majority of another body set up by Congress. And Congress never set the body up. So my proposal has 17 members. 16 of them are divided between former executive branch officials, presidents, vice presidents, attorneys general, secretaries of state or defense, treasury. And then the other 8 would be physicians, psychologists, psychiatrists, people with medical training. And then
okay, so that's intriguing. Why feels weird. If this part of the this part of the body was always supposed to be there, I have to ask, why was it not always there? Because my brain is very confused by this.
Together, all of these people would form the body, and they would choose a 17th member who would become the chair.
Is there some concern, though, that, it doesn't seem like this is something that Trump would ever put his signature on, recognizing that it would feel like a coup against him?
Well, first of all, nothing ever happens in the 25th Amendment field without the consent and cooperation and involvement of the vice president. So certainly with J.D. Vance, for the next couple of years, he's got nothing to worry about. The commission itself is a bipartisan commission. So half of the 16 members are appointed by majority leaders in the House and Senate, and half are appointed by minority leaders in the House and the Senate. So that's scrupulously bipartisan. And then together they would choose a chair who, would be the 17th member.
Is there anybody in the Republican conference that, as far as you know, is interested in adopting something like this? especially in the aftermath of Trump's comments about Iran?
Well, what's interesting is I was introducing this stuff during the first Trump administration. And then towards the end of the Biden administration, they started talking about Biden's health and his cognitive state. They were claiming he was senile and so on, leaving aside whatever factual speculation they're engaged in. A number of them came to me and said, why don't you put your bill back in? And I said, you know what? If you guys introduce the bill, you've got the majority. I'll co-sponsor it because I believe in it. Yeah. But you guys take the lead right now. And, you know, that shows you there's always political complexities around doing something with the 25th Amendment, because it always looks like it's a hit on the person who happens to be in office. But hey, the founders of the 25th Amendment, which is to say people who were around in the 1960s, were emphatic that we needed this because they said we had 535 members of Congress and one president. And, you know, the president is usually in their, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s. Trump is now in his 80s. And so there are lots of things that can happen.
Congressman, have any Republicans approached you, not publicly, but privately, to express their concern with Trump's mental state?
No. But I know several have been very upset about the war, about the circumvention of congressional war powers, and also about the decision-making in the war. So I have had some quiet conversations with a handful of Republicans about that. So
enough to take an action against him, or just enough to kind of murmur behind the scenes, but not dare invite the ire of the God King.
Well, I think that's right. You know, it's murmurings at this point.
Yeah.
But, you know,
like, this is just like an open question. I don't actually expect an answer from this, but I wonder what everyone's line. Because the line for certain politicians, and I'm going to say this for both sides, because like you can make an argument that maybe Biden should have been impeached. Well, not impeached, but like the 25th Amendment, which I can understand some of those arguments. What is that line where one is, and I wonder what that's the universally agreed line is, like it's too far if the president does this across the line. And I mean, even if the president is part of your party, I do not like I'm just going to vote this way because my party is, and I know that's not always what's, but I would like to see people voting for them more for themselves or for the country instead of the party or sometimes their own interests. And it concerns me that that's not happening at the And that's maybe always the problem, and it just more greatly exemplified at this moment of time in history because of social media being around, and we're getting to see, basically we're getting 100% input all the time, and basically if I, like right now, I can just go right here, and basically I can know where, actually there's a better website. I can know exactly where Trump is roughly, like, no, I'm not gonna say 100% of the time because I don't watch that website that quickly. But like can tell you where he's at. With like his schedule. And I can tell you where he is roughly at. I can tell you the same thing if we go to White House calendar, which is like public. Which I think a lot of that's the previous website, just different interface. And with that knowledge, you can always keep, like, have a panopticon view on him. Well, they're just on the president, but any of our Congress members. And so, and I'm saying that for the people watching, we get to see no one's 100%. By the way, I'm not saying Trump is a good person in this. I also there's a lot of actions he does not like. And I'll say, in my personal interpretation, I do not like him as a person. But, like, even for, like, Biden or Obama, And I think social media, as time goes on, just gets stronger. Just because the amount of people have increased, just because of technology being cheaper in theory, or being more of a social requirement. But basically, since you have basically a direct line to your elected officials, you get to see all their worst moments just because it's 100% watching. And so part of me wonders how previous moments in history during Watergate would have been impacted if people had social media. I know that like Roosevelt had fireside chats because it was a direct line to communicating to the people. But like that wasn't 100, like that wasn't always a feed that was always on. Sometimes it was off. And part of me wonders if there should be 100% line on 100% of the time, because like there's moments about because the amount of stress that job has. You're going to have bad moments. Any person, even if the person's a good person, they're going to have bad moments. So like that's just me going down a rabbit hole.
I will say that, we ended up having 10 House Republicans vote for impeachment after the insurrection took place, and 7 in the Senate voted to convict. And we're beginning to see relatively serious fractures take place in the Republican Party. And when you've got Tucker Carlson, who is at least the most popular political communicator in their party, if not the most popular political leader, attacking Trump over the Iran war, when you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was his most faithful sycophant and zealot, saying that he's, quote, gone insane. We're hoping that some Republicans would be willing to break ranks on this. It doesn't take many. Remember, we're just down 3 votes at this point.
Right. Sometimes I think when anything happens in politics, it feels like it happens really slowly and then all at once. Does this feel like that moment for Trump and his support? Does it feel like the bottom is falling out, or does it feel like, I mean, look, there have been a lot of false starts. There have been a lot of like, we got him now, only for him to, for support to coalesce around him, for, these defected Republicans to come back home. Nothing that a nice shiny dinner at Mar-a-Lago can't fix. But does it feel like this is a moment where he's permanently losing some support and the bottom's falling out?
Well, as you say, Brian, it ain't over till it's over. I mean, we thought the 2020 election was over after the ballots were finally counted, and it was clear that Biden beat him by 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. And, it went all the way up to January 6, 2021, with the massive violent insurrection backing up an inside coup. And then even then, people were saying they were going to try to do the same thing on Inauguration Day. So, yeah, it's really not over till it's over. And like a horror movie, even when you think it's over, it's not necessarily over.
Yeah.
I think it would clearly be premature for anybody to say that. On the other hand, the direction of events is really clear right now. The president's poll numbers are sinking like a stone. His political support is melting away all over the country. And we have been steadily winning elections all over America. I was just with Emily Gregory, who became the new representative for Palm Beach County. Yeah. She represents Donald Trump in the Florida State House. We, had a 30-point switchover in a race in Texas for the state Senate, and just dramatic, historic victories for Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. If you add up all the elections we've had over the last year, Democrats are up like 13 or 14 points over where they were in the comparable election in the prior cycle.
To that end, we're seeing a lot of these Democrats overperform and win their elections and flip seats across the country. If I'm not mistaken, Republicans haven't flipped a single seat, but Democrats have flipped numerous seats across the country. Mm-hmm. Is there some concern that by engaging in a process like either the 25th Amendment or impeachment, that it can redound to Trump's benefit because it will feel like, it will kind of sort people into the usual D versus R food fight where...
How are you doing today?
where Trump gets to say, look, they're coming after me, and it's it's the Democrats versus the Republicans. You're either with me or you're against me, and this is politics as usual. Is there some concern that, and we saw that, by the way, with some of with some of the prosecution post 2020 election, where Trump was able to garner some of that support back because it felt like he could martyr himself and draw people back onto his side. And so can you just talk on that idea, on like, the unfortunate byproduct of
don't even know what that is. Oopsie, I clicked it. Oh. Huh. I don't know what that is. Oh, weird.
possibly engaging in 25th Amendment talks or impeachment talks?
Wait, hold on. I want to make sure. Okay. Yeah, no, okay. My mic's
When Democrats are winning anyway, might distract from what is otherwise an organic, is
the connection good on your everyone else's side? I have no idea what that sound was. That was weird. I don't know what that sound was. That was intriguing. I never had that sound before. TikTokers
series of victories playing out.
There is a risk, indisputably, that any focus on Donald Trump's crimes or his apparent mental unfitness for office would redound to his benefit, because he could go back to the base and rally people around him when that base is fracturing right now. And I think people are aware of that. Of course, there is an obverse risk that if you ignore it, people will say, how is it that you can allow these things to happen without actually doing anything, even with the limited panoply of responsive mechanisms available to you in the Constitution? So I think that, that's the Scylla and Charybdis we've got to walk. It can't be a fetish for us, but on the other hand, it can't be a taboo for us either. It's not a panacea, but it's also not something we need to be afraid of. We have impeached Donald Trump twice before, proving that we can do it. We will do it. We're not afraid of that. The Senate did not live up to its responsibility and did not convict him. So what I take away from your basic point, which I agree with, is that we must look at it not just as a legal matter, which it is, whether he's committed impeachable offenses, high crime.
Okay, so a lot of it is. So it's more of it has to be said and done about like how this a lot of this is going to be interpretation, not interpretational, but there has to be action that's. I understand this is a symbolic gesture to impeach Trump. I understand that makes sense. Even though I have my own. Even though it'd be awesome to see people not voting along party lines, it'd be very interesting to see. But like I know that conservatives are saying they have no problem with the oppose his action, or they think the president's just joking. They think that some of his staff have said that he's doing something similar to Nixon, because Nixon made comments that he's acting so crazy that they can't put nothing will like stick to him and that stuff. I don't know if I would actually use Nixon as a reference, because he almost was the closest president to get impeached. Also I do have an ad in like 10 seconds, so I'll be going on another 2-minute and 2-minute 30-second break. So I hope everyone sticks around, and thank you for joining me. And there we go. Hello, people. Okay, The next thing I have onto my addendum to-do list is I want to talk about the plans that the GOP or the Republicans have for midterms, because I want to make sure I cite the number correctly. Not from Axios. Currently, Trump's war chest has $500 million into it, and also $300 million in pro-Trump and Super Inc. Hacks right now that's happening. And so like, and I know a lot of the GOP's current strategy is to fund as much as they can and use that in advertisement funding. And they're hoping that funding will be able to countermand some of the seats that flipped over to the House, which is 29 seats, at least at the federal level. And so, and that's actually, and basically also during this time, yeah, there we go. I also I know that my Such got a new host or and that stuff, so I was wanting to watch him as well. There we go.
We have to find some way to contain this toxicity he injected into his own political bloodstream with all the mistakes, the gaffes, and the controversies of the past 48 to 72 hours in particular. And adding to the problem, there are very limited medicines for this toxicity. He's still grappling with criticizing the Pope, one of the most popular, if not the most popular figure in the United States.
There we go.
He tried the vice president, J.D. Vance, to clean this up a bit Monday night with limited results.
Pope Leo has expressed problems with the war in Iran, says that we should be peacemakers, been very vocal. The president took to Truth Social saying Leo should be thankful because, as everyone knows, he was a shocking surprise. He wasn't on any list to be Pope, was only put there because the church, because he was an American, they thought he would be good, best way to deal with President Donald J. Trump. If I wasn't in the White House, Leo wouldn't be in the Vatican. Just wondering, as a Catholic, how you consider this Truth Social post, and then the post of the picture.
I didn't actually even know that he made that statement. That feels very very, very weird. And why did everything get changed?
Which a lot of people took as the president posting a picture of himself as Jesus. He later said that he posted it as thinking as a doctor saving people.
I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one.
But it really caused a kerfuffle, Mr. Vice President. I'm just wondering what you make of all of this, and whether it's what you think of this back and forth with the church.
Well, first of all, Brett, I think the president was posting a joke, and of course he took it down because he recognized that a lot of people weren't understanding his humor in that case. I think the president of the United States likes to mix it up on social media, and I actually think that's one of the good things about this president is that he's not filtered. He doesn't send everything through a communications professional. He actually reaches out directly to the people.
Shouldn't the president set an example for how he wants the people to lead? So would you want a random person? I guess I do what I care, you know?
You know, when it comes to the disagreements with the Vatican, look, we're going to have disagreements, Brett, from time to time. I think it's a good thing, actually.
And he's got a DoorDash problem. He brought in this photo op Monday at the White House with a DoorDash worker to tout the No Tax on Tips initiative, and it backfired.
They want to have, open borders. They want to have men playing in women's sport. Do you think that men should play in women's sports?
I really don't have an opinion on that.
You don't? I'll bet you do.
No, I'm here about
Pizza.
no tax on tips.
Yeah. Okay.
And in the time since, there's been reporting that that same DoorDash worker has been active at other political events, making this all look very staged.
Yeah, no.
Now, what kind of political ammunition can you bring to this type of fight? Republicans seem very keen on celebrating tax cuts, Trump's tax cuts, beyond the DoorDash photo op. The president's expected to talk more about no taxes on tips at events later in the week. And Republicans have set up a vote tomorrow on a resolution to, in some way, celebrate, to formally celebrate some of Trump's tax policies. They actually have a House Rules Committee meeting late in the day to get ready for that big resolution. But a resolution is just that. It's a statement. There's nothing binding or helpful in a resolution. It's just a statement.
So no, I was just seeing what the GOP's plans are right now. Because like Trump had the interview with the DoorDash driver, and she was actually one of the, and she made the statement of she's there because she agrees with Trump's no tax on tips, but then she was one of the she was one of the people who spoke on no tax on tips before, and I'm curious to see what the GOP's reaction is because the Democrats have flipped so many seats. Also, how are you doing, quack quack duckity duckity? That's an awesome name, by the way. That's awesome. Um, but like, yeah, I'm more because I know that they have a bunch of money in the war chest, so to speak. And so I'm just more curious what the plan is there. Because like $500 million is a lot of money you can do. And I wonder if there's going to be a lot of talk shows. I want to say JD Vance was seen going to I want to say Massachusetts, but it might be another M state. So that was interesting.
Of the Congress, that looks like a very, very thin effort to help people get through the day, to help them make ends meet. And these tax cut policies don't have the oomph perhaps the Trump administration was hoping, because they are celebrating them amid soaring prices for gas and for groceries. This fixation on Pope
No, it has nothing to do with Argentina. I was born in America. And I'm still live in America. Argent comes from I like the word silver, and I wanted something that sounded a little bit cooler. So I combined argent, and then I just ended up with a random sounding set of letters. So yeah.
Leo by Trump. This picking of a fight with Pope Leo, this ongoing battle in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, and these escalating prices with little effort to stop them or little ammunition to stop them, all of that is a perfect storm for Trump and causes big political problems. It also causes problems for Republican senators and Republican Senate challengers who are trying to hold the majority for Trump. If Trump loses the Senate in November, he may be unable to confirm a Supreme Court justice if there is no more Justice Alito or Thomas in the second half of this term. What's more, his legislative agenda is gone, derailed if Democrats control the Senate. Jessica Taylor, who helps analyze Senate races for the Cook Political Report, told me,
I know that a lot of the current conservative judges right now, a lot of them came from a list that the Federalist Society gave, and a lot of them, I'm gonna say majority of them have been seen being what's the word? Like they said they have worked with the Federalist Society. Some of them have said they have not. But like, it's weird.
there are some big races that are now very much swinging in the Democrats' direction.
It's really that Democrats have some strong recruits in the types of Senate seats that they need to put into play, and that they're even favored in now per our forecast. So John Ossoff in Georgia, we've moved that race from toss-up to lean Democrat. He started out as the
because like, why do I keep? Oh, hey, I'm still ahead. Because, and like, there's like, I even know the polling is terrible and that stuff. Yeah, the DNC has been outraised by the Republican National Committee 7-1. A lot of investors. I want to see if I can find the website because I always. There we go. There we go. because like I know that's the current money breakdown by the billionaires alone, which is like 79.5% are GOP people, which is 344.3 million. And also I will fully admit, ideally this money would not even be here. I would actually get rid of overturn Citizens United, because I think that $10,000 limit's enough.
Most endangered Democratic incumbent. He still is, but that's just because the other Democratic seats are open seats in New Hampshire, Minnesota, and Michigan. But he has just amassed a massive war chest, while Republicans still have infighting in their primary. Meanwhile, the environment continues to get worse overall for Republicans and just better for Democrats. In North Carolina, former Governor Roy Cooper now has moved ahead in our rating. We also moved that one from toss-up to lean Democrat. This is important because it represents a net pickup. This is an open Republican-held seat. So the first step where Democrats can try to get to 4. Now, I think the Senate is in play. I will say that, but Republicans are still favored because getting to 4 is still a very difficult task. But if the environment continues to deteriorate, we may get there sooner rather than later.
Oh, is it really? I don't know then. How do other leftist people tag then? I will fully admit, I have not looked at people's tag. Because like I need, before I like claim like like I know there's like socialism and communism, and I know the various differences of that. I want to educate myself much more before I would even claim either one of those labels. But yeah, no. Do they use something different? I'm actually truly curious now. Huh. Because I thought like progressive just meant left in general. Okay. I mean, okay. They associate progressives with liberals who they vehemently despise. I don't despise any group. I think it's a bad thing to despise anyone. I dislike some people, but like I would say like I dislike Trump. I don't dislike groups of people. Okay, maybe besides Nazis. But like that's because of the ideology in itself to say that. But like I can't think of, if you're a liberal, okay, that's fine. You can be. I'm not going to be upset if you are. Congrats if you are. Congrats if you're not. And I just hope that like if like you're a U.S. citizen or want the hope for the best of the United States, or I'm just being this vague as possible, that I want to see America be better tomorrow than it is today. That's my hope for it, and I want to have more financial security for people. I do want I want Medicare. I want healthcare for everyone and that stuff. And I think government can just do cheaper than the average person. I mean, do I have very strong distaste of capitalism? Yes, I do personally. But I'm not going to fearmonger or hate anyone for that. I deal with this. I have my beliefs about capitalism, but I don't think I understand that but I also know that capitalism will probably always be here. Oh, thank you. Capitalism will probably always be in my lifetime and that stuff, and you can't get rid of in totality unless a massive miracle event happens, or a massive event. And some of the and those events I do not want some of those events to happen. The action to transition would be bad. So like I want there to be more socialized programs. Health care for everyone. I think health insurance is an awful thing. I don't like medical patents. I think that my running theory is if there was no medical patents, that there might have been already a cure to cancer or even Alzheimer's. Because there'd be more freedom and creativity to work with other people and not competition, by just boosting each other up using the previous invention of medical technology to help build your understanding, because some of the best inventions we have are building on previous ones. Because like the internet would not been able to be existed without like radio technology, or the theory of it at least. Internet would not exist without computers. You need to use all the previous. You stand on the shoulders of giants, be where you are today. Yes, I agree with that as well. Patents are what keep insulin prices so high. Yeah. And I try my best to make this as a chill or relaxed place. I try to educate people. Um, and I want to invite as many people, well, not as many people. I want this to be more of an informational stream and educational stream when it comes to politics, and not biting anyone's heads off. And so, I think there has to be better infrastructure. Like, I'm tempted to say that statement. I would actually have to think about it. Like, I would actually, my logic to carry on through, I would have to carry on that logic. Like, I want to say yes, I agree with you, but I have to like double think, like think about this more off stream, about the because of the idea of. I want to say yes, I agree with you right now, but I want to check my logic off stream and that stuff, because it's like very complex. Because like I'm trying, like, I'm going to use Roombas as an instance, or robot vacuums. Like right now, this is just a random factoid. If any Roomba besides the Roombas itself cannot have a sensor to know when it's full, because that is patented by Roomba. And so they have to wait until the patent on Roomba expires for them to actually add that feature, even though that's a very basic function of robot vacuums, a sensor to know when the vacuum is clear. And so that's why you would anything I can go on my spiel about why I dislike Roomba. But like, yeah. That's the easiest example I could think of on top of my head. It's like that should be an easy example of why patents in general are just bad. Because I want to say that I heard rumor that for electrical vehicles before Teslas came onto the scene, it used to be an open source socket for charging cars. I can double check that. There, open source. Yeah. Oh yeah, Open EV SE. I think it does the exact opposite. Like I think the most common argument is, oh, it disincentivize from people from innovating. I think the patents actually themselves already incentivize people from innovating right now. Because I can't do certain things because I know that this other company has already invented it. And so I can't invent it because this company already has put a blocker on it. And it's more of, I have a continuation of this idea, like mechanical wise, maybe even medical wise, and I can't build on top of it because there's a medical patent stopping me from doing that. And maybe there is like different, and then because like also I understand like you should always have different branches of thought because if you stifle to one path, that can have like that can just create monoscopic view, and that's not helpful either. And always have different views because I think each path of logical thinking could help with other pathological thinking. But yeah, I think the current system of patents stifles innovation itself. Because you assume that the people with little capital, and I'm going to say little capital here for this one instance, because you assume that people who have the best ideas are going to thrive, but they don't, because bigger corporations can buy the idea and just never produce that idea. And so why should you come up with ideas? Like, it might be helpful for that one person if they have a breakthrough idea and that stuff, but then it doesn't actually help the people they made that product for. Because each product is created for a group of people to help deal with a need or a want. And that's why we see a lot of times, like, it's getting to the point that I would have to see the 6 the idea is that poor people won't innovate because there's no private profit incentive. They'll if they do make a groundbreaking innovation, it'll just be reversed by engineer by a big corporation and outperform them. The first part of that people won't innovate because there's no profit incentive. I don't necessarily think that's true. People do things when there is no profit involved. And I think people no, let me word that. Profit of monetary value. Like right now I am live streaming mostly, like 99% of it, because I find it cool to learn about politics. And the different facets of how they work and how people get to their conclusions and avenue of thinking and the ways that people can make changes in societies and different political systems. I find that really, really cool. And then the other part of that is reverse engineering. That gets more complicated because technically they can do that now. Because like you get like I believe from my understanding as a patent you have to prove that you created the invention first off. But then in theory that the big corporations can just falsify that paper trail. I'm not saying that any are. I'm just saying they'll and if it's basically if there is the other part of it is if it's basically open source, which is I'm going to do that because it's easiest for my brain to follow through. Is it would not other companies besides that major corporation would be able to have the technology to build it as well, and some people might find ways to make it cheaper. Some people might actually be willing to spend extra money if it's for a mom and pop store, or a smaller business. So there's that aspect as well, or if it's like a local area. Yes, people invent naturally, but will you deny that adding another sense to inventing make it more prevalent? Uh, uh, that's like very. There's a lot of incentives to innovate and that stuff. Sometimes it's for profit, and some people, I think it's based off people's personality types. Some people, and like, some people invent because they like the money from it. Some other people innovate because they see someone or themselves having a problem, so they create a problem to solve it. Other people innovate because they just like experimenting with stuff and seeing and just seeing how that goes. So I might remove a group of people from who would innovate, otherwise they wouldn't. But like, I would say, but like the other two people who are innovating, one just because they want to help others or help themselves with like the invention they made. Um, and also there would be notoriety of name. For inventing something, which some people care about that as well because of just getting their name well known out. No, like they're yeah, no, and like I'll fully admit, like I would have to look into patents. Like, hold on, how long? Oh, sorry. How long do patents last in U.S.? Okay. I was thinking 20 years or okay, 15 to 20 years depending on what it is. Um and also like the 15 to 20 years is very intriguing because of how fast tech now comes out. Because like an iPhone from 15 years ago would not be able might be able to do something. Apple's probably not the hardware players. I do like Apple. I have their own problem with their software. I'm also an Android person. But like that 15 and 20 years, especially in the current landscape of technology and how fast things are evolving, also does slow it down. So there is repercussions of it because of like the reason that I have this is a VTuber. The reason I have an iPhone at all to begin with is because iPhone cameras have a depth camera. Androids do not have it. Webcams do not have it. I think that Microsoft Connect actually had it, which is kind of funny. But like Android can't innovate on that feature because of the patent. And then you could say the 15 year to 20 years would actually delay in that time frame. I might forget like I had that problem or times moved on, so I don't necessarily that is no longer a problem that I'm aware of because I've moved on to other things. So there's argues for and against patents, and there's probably more if I think off screen. And there's always going to be arguments for or against some system in society today. Like I think a little 99% of systems or even like 100% of systems have a reason for being, and I could argue for or against them. Um but yeah, there we go. I don't know, to double check. Okay.
Ohio now swinging in the direction of Democrats with
Um no, intellectual property, that's also a fair thing. And if I have had discussions with other people in my life about it, I don't think corporations should earn intellectual property for sure. And I think that if like Disney like I would have to look into the inventor like inventors are different things. Like I should know who invented Star Wars. I really should. But like if Disney wants to use his intellectual property, then they should basically pay him a fee every single time and a profit of whatever products they make. And then the intellectual property should be much shorter than what it is. I think it's like 90 years in the US now. Also, I want to make sure like, I also should like intellectual property. I wanted to make sure I actually understand it correctly. Because I understand I might be getting that confused with trademarks. I'll say that trademarks and IPs, like I get them mixed up all the time. As oh, okay. Oh, I didn't. Okay, so IPs, the master umbrella, and then patents and copyright are below that. Okay. And that was me just looking that up quickly on Wikipedia. And how long do they last in the US? I mean, that is true. I own all ideas because I said I own. And then there is actually I don't like this logic train, but I also do acknowledge it's probably a thing. There's only a certain level of original thought there is. Like they said, majority of stories are you can boil it down to like 7 structures and that stuff. There's only so many types of like how many ways notes can be arranged. And there's only so much limit you can have for any of those things. The point of and like music operates one of the most complicated things ever. I did go down a rabbit hole looking up that. The hero's journey is like one of the formulas. But um some of them I'm thinking for like One Piece, I'm going to reference One Piece law on this because I love One Piece. Oh, you own the hero's journey? Oh. I think you should go after I can list a bunch of IPs you can go after now. I think Star Wars is a big one. Mm-hmm. There's probably a lot. I was gonna say with like One Piece, I was thinking of like even though Luffy has more of a static character and that stuff, like he does improve more than people give him credit for. But like he's a protagonist that impacts the world around him. Which is a different formula of a story. And so like that's always
Former Senator Sherrod Brown appearing to be the likely nominee.
Do you hear my dog barking? Okay. I just paused because I want to make sure if I continue hearing her bark.
They're actually talking about potential challenges, meritorious challenges in Nebraska. Of course, they're talking about Texas again. Leave that aside. North Carolina and Georgia now looking more favorable for Democrats. Alaska, they have a strong candidate who is raising a lot of money by the millions to try to swing Alaska. Suddenly there's a conversation. And Democrats are feeling far more bullish about Michigan, where there is this very competitive primary looming.
Well, I can see logic there. I would probably have to like I will fully admit, like, I read fan fiction. I have read and I think there's amazing fan fiction writers. And I know a lot of people use fan fiction as their gateway into I'm gonna put quote unquote serious writing. Even though some fiction's just amazing and even puts the original art source to so that in writing degree can make it laughable about the I've seen stuff like that. And I know a lot of them have to change their names and change some of the events to like if they want to publish that work, like change the names. Like we can go into the whole entire thing about like how 50 Shades of Grey was used to be a fan fiction of Twilight, and then what was the thing that came after 50 Shades? I don't know. It's fan fiction top of fan fiction. Oh, 365 Days is like fan fiction of 50 Shades of Grey, but yeah, it's weird, and they just changed names. And those are, I'm not saying any of, I have not read Twilight. I don't like any of those works. I have my own problems with them. But I'm just using a top example because I listened to some of the drama in that sphere. But yeah, like, I would say I also think there has to be a major change to, like, infrastructure in cities. Like, I want free, busing, and, like, free busing or subways or trolleys. I probably can't think of all the public resources you can do for transportation. Um, because I want to decrease people's reliance on cars. At least just alone for just decreasing traffic and, like And I know that'll probably might be very, very incredibly hard in the United States because of how like big United States is and how reliant we are today, and there's basically no infrastructure. And also changing some of the rules about who has to fix what when it comes to like if a sidewalk is broken, in some areas the house that's the sidewalk in front of that house, the person has to fix the sidewalk when I think that should always be the city at least or the state. Um, and I probably have not thought through like I've made a list of things I would change about the government, but I have not put in a list of are they anti-capitalist statements. Well, ideally I do want universal basic income, but I do want like caveats to that, as in like if you're not working for a year, you have to go do a training and that stuff, and then you have to keep like trying for a job and that stuff. And I understand certain people will not be in that program because of their ability of not to work.
We spoke with one of them, Mallory McMorrow, one of the three.
And I'm also saying universal basic income because I know there's a time where AI will just replace, like, not this AI currently, because this current AI is kind of laughable. I'm not going to go because the amount of resources and it's not even truly AI. But like true artificial intelligence will eventually replace human jobs, and I want people to still sustain their living.
Candidates in the Democratic primary who says, yes, Republicans are going to try to move heaven and earth to win Michigan, to try to create some form of a firewall.
Michigan is always competitive. And the Republicans announced last week, effectively, that this is their top target. I mean, we knew that, but the Senate Leadership Fund announced that they will spend $45 million here for Mike Rogers, which is more than they are.
People are acting very touchy about this because if you don't acknowledge IP, you're admitting when people claim that AI studies are art, they're acting entitled. I'm not like AI has a big ramifications on our current environment because the amount of water for the cooling of these AI centers, increasing electricity usage and that stuff, like that's its own category of thing. And I think people really, this gets very. I want to learn how to draw. It's one of the things I want to do. It's on my table of things to learn. And and I think art is an amazing and beautiful art. And the amount of the the tribulations or the evolutions of your own work make it even more beautiful because of how much time you put into it. Copyright infringement on that work, it's like a lot of AI stuff feels weird to me. And it got sadly some people just have that style to begin with, which I know that's where AI got it from. It's more part of me wonders if they'd be less touchy is if their livelihoods were not put on the line, if AI art did not hamper it. Like if everyone had a form of income no matter what, would the AI stealing it impact it? And probably still would to a degree. But I wouldn't. And it gets into like a very thing of like one protectiveness about like your own income, which is fine, and then also protectiveness about how much work and time you put into that. And I do think there is like other ramifications to AI. And it gets very, very complicated quickly. And I'm trying my best not to like sound mean or because I do respect the amount of work that artists put into it. I've seen breathtaking pieces of art, and I don't want artists to ever stop creating. Um, but yeah.
going to spend in Georgia, Maine, Alaska, Iowa, and New Hampshire. So they're all in, because if they can buy this Senate seat, they block Democrats from having any path to flipping the U.S. Senate.
That's about who's trying to win office. Who is leaving office? Well, these expulsion votes that were being queued up for midweek now seem to be derailed because Eric Swalwell, California, has resigned his seat rather than face expulsion. And Tony Gonzalez appears on his way out in Texas. But Joyce Vance, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama and an expert legal mind, says you have to note the difference between politics, political due process, and legal rights and legal due process. Of course, in a court of law, you are assumed innocent until proven guilty. For politics, a much different standard, a much different circumstance.
The question is what happens next, because I've seen a lot of people raising this concern. They say, well, he's entitled to due process. And that's absolutely right. If he is, and the reporting says he's under investigation in Manhattan. Apparently, there's an alleged sexual assault that occurred there. Due process. He is innocent until proven guilty and convicted by a jury, right? That is just an absolute. But that's not how it works in the political arena.
Really appreciate your feedback and your comments. Lorraine says the USA system of checks and balances only works if citizens demand that their elected officials act with integrity. Please, for the love of God, act now. Participation in primary elections is critical. Those are coming up in the coming weeks if they haven't happened there already. And of course, the general election. The challengers seeking to oust incumbents are banking on big turnout, kind of like what we saw in Hungary, with enormous turnout helped oust an entrenched official. And we have a comment here from Care2914 saying, great report, Scott, keeping it blunt and real. Yeah, that's the goal. Straight talk, straight to the point, no wasted time, no wasted energy, and clearly explaining.
Why is that? Oh, forgot.
The war in Iran is causing a spike in gas prices and pushing inflation to 3.3% in March. And that's significant because that's the fastest increase we've seen in nearly 2 years, according to newly released data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Meanwhile, consumer sentiment is at its lowest level on record since 1952, a sign Americans are getting a little uneasy with the economy. I want to bring in pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz, who joins me now. So, Frank, I just want to start with how politically problematic is this war-fueled economic slide for President Trump and his allies, considering that was the #1 issue for voters when they went to the ballot box back in November?
Well, for most people, the economy is the #1 issue. And I want to apologize to viewers for the sound of voice, but I thought this was too important to pass up. The fact is,
I knew you'd fight through, but thanks for being here.
But yeah. Also, tell me if any of my previous statements were confusing or not, because I understand that sometimes I'm very wordy.
Yes, I'm not giving up. The affordability, gas prices, energy prices, food prices, housing, healthcare, all of these.
I mean, like, I mean, I could argue, like, pardon me, my brain wants to say you could argue it either way. It's anti or pro-capitalist. Yeah, and it's like, it actually might be just one of those arguments that's actually both. It might be pro and anti-capitalist. And also, like, there's also, like, the free market gets very, very complicated. Like, I used to believe in a free market, but I don't anymore because, like, you have to have some standards. Like, I don't. Depends on what you define free, because technically we don't have a free market. Just not. I don't think actually even attainable. I think that's a false notion that people have, because you do want to have some standards. Like, I don't want to have acrylic or not arsenic in my paints. I want to have some health standards when it comes to developing products. And so that is restricting the free market. And there is some limits to it. And like I think it's going to be always, like, when you talk about what you're doing, you always want to have some restrictions and then some not restrictions. to do things. Because like a truly free market would not have any regulation, which at this point, just like getting from other countries do not have the same safety standards as the United States. And you just need. Why don't I actually? There's different levels of safety standards. The U.S. might be lower than some other countries and that stuff. And there's also still the people are still figuring out how human body responds to certain things. To see if it's like helpful in that stuff. Like that's why I won't ever say I'm like for or against like pre-market, but actually pre-market I just do not see as a thing. But there's certain regulation tactics I'm for or against. Like I'm against ID scans on platform. I think that's a bad thing to do because I do not want corporations to take more of my identity. Do they probably have more than I probably want to acknowledge? Yeah, I 100% acknowledge that. I just don't want to upload my government identification to them.
Are key issues, and they're all voter issues. Now, make no mistake, this is still April. There's more than 6 months between now and Election Day. But there is no issue that will be more important to Republicans' efforts to keep the House and the Senate than the economy in general and affordability in particular. And this is not good news for the president at this moment.
Well, and even if a deal is made in the Strait of Hormuz, the speed with which these gas prices go up doesn't always match the speed with which they go down. So this could actually extend a good long time after this as well. We will see. I want to get your pulse on, look, President Trump blasting right-wing pundits who've criticized the war. Public polling, though, does show Trump's war with Iran is backed by a large majority of Republican voters. But do you believe the likes of Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and more speak for a significant part of Trump's base? How do you assess their voice?
No, I 100% agree with that. But there's like different things. Like I don't trust corporations. Like for instance, Discord, got its identities hacked. If Discord gets its identities hacked, I do not want to have to dealing with worrying about someone stealing my identity and that stuff. And I want there to be limitations on that and regulations about that. And especially like I might understand I might be already doomed, but that doesn't mean my children have to be doomed. And I think that that's one of the places where US has messed up a lot is not putting more regulations or saying like, hey, you can't sell people's data without their permission. Part of me wants us to make it more capitalistic, or well, like jokingly, more capitalistic, as in like, hey, if you sell my data, if I get a profit of how much you sell my data for, why not? But this is me more being facetious. I don't think it's ever going to be on the table. So like I understand that for me, especially since I'm like Gen Z, my data is probably already screwed. But that doesn't mean like I have younger family members who are not as much on the webs yet because they're 3 or 4 years old. And I want them to have a better protections than I have today. So yeah.
Is in this.
The voices matter. And the fact that the president doesn't have a united front at this moment among people who backed him in 2024 is of obvious concern. But the critical nature for me, as a pollster, are the independents. These are individuals who will vote in 2026, are not aligned by political party, are not particularly ideological, and are not particularly political. And their opinions matter most because they're the deciding vote in the 24 seats that determine who controls the Congress. And right now, their hostility to the war, at least at this moment, is going to be a problem for the Republicans. But again, it's only the middle of April, and so much can change between now and then.
Yeah.
It's still a warning sign. There are red lights flashing everywhere. But that just tells me that the White House and Congress needs to do a better job of explaining why, how, and what happens at the end.
Yeah, I mean, saying this is early, look how much has happened already to this point in April. It feels like it feels like a million news cycles to this point. You know, you were talking about polling. I was looking at new Pew polling that was out where 6 in 10 Americans have a very or somewhat unfavorable view of Israel, which is interesting because it's up 7 percentage points since last year and nearly 20 points since 2022. Now, a majority of Republicans view Israel favorably, but there is a generational divide there. And I just wonder, do you believe that has factored into Americans' negative view on the war overall, especially since the countries have been almost in lockstep throughout this?
This has never happened in modern history, or in at least over the last 25 years. Israel has always been seen favorably by most Republicans. It's been seen unfavorably by some Democrats. But the partisanship is less important right now, and the age break is so significant. Younger voters have turned against Israel and supportive of.
I don't know who that is. I wonder if Big Yo. I mean, a lot of people have your data, which saddens me. I think that words. I get word salad so much. I think that people should choose what they want to do for about any information about their personal information about like their bodily autonomy. I'm dense. Like you're probably. I'm not like. I don't know. What? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know who you're referring to. But I also like have a very weird relationship with the internet. Like I realize that I do not pay attention to the average influencers that people talk about. And so is oh. Oh, yes. The answer is yes. Yeah, no, the answer is yes. The prime minister of that land does. I'm just dense. I did not know he had a nickname. I did not know he was not what's called that.
The Palestinians in numbers that I've never seen since the new millennium. And for the Israelis, they have to be concerned that their messaging and their procedures and their policies and how they prosecuted this war is causing the American people to turn against them in numbers that they never imagined before. And let me say this.
Loosely. I uninstalled it back in January, and then I reinstalled it on last week. And technically I'm actually live streaming there right now. And I maybe spent like 30 minutes top in the last week on it. I'm trying to play with like different settings with it. Because I also will fully admit that my brain does not mesh with TikTok well. I'm trying. I just but yeah. Okay.
Foreign policy normally doesn't matter in off-year elections. But this year, in terms of where the heat is, where voters are most passionate, the fact that Israel has seen this decline in its public support, I believe that Israel is going to be one of the issues that's going to matter in this upcoming election, and that the people over in Tel Aviv ought to be paying attention to this, because in the end, funding, allies, support really does matter to the country and to the people of that country. And they better be paying attention to it because this is significant and this is serious.
Well, and funding for foreign allies does tend to permeate the base a little bit more when you look at the state of the economy. We saw a little bit of that fracturing in terms of repeated support for Ukraine amid its war going into the presidential election last year. Or back in 2024. I want to ask you one more thing. The New York Times reporting Vice President Vance, understanding Trump wanted to act, pushed for overwhelming force to get the job done quickly, and that Vance warned the war could break apart President Trump's political coalition and would be seen as a betrayal by many voters who had bought into the promise of no new wars. Now, once the war started, he didn't try to sell the American public on the conflict, and I know we are looking way ahead at this point, but has this conflict better positioned him for a 2020?
I had to do the spiel. I'm gonna try and talk around the Albert. I will be having an ad in 1 minute. So if you have Twitch Turbo, if you use Twitch Prime or subscribe to this channel, you'll get no ad. I need to do this so I don't get, for any new people coming in, they do not get a new ad as soon as they join this stream. So thank you for anyone who sticks through the ad. It means a lot to me. Yeah. And I think that's everything. I keep getting tongue-tied a lot, though. Yeah, and I should automatically flip over. Oh, I'm back. I forgot I muted myself.
Of the Republican Party and the dynamic of how this current issue is being handled in the moment.
Make no mistake, the closeness of the president and his key advisors and the key people in the administration is unbreakable and unshakable. And to suggest anything else is simply kind of playing games. That J.D. Vance is the front runner by far, and it'll be very hard for anyone to topple him. That said, it is so long between now and then that it's kind of unfair to prognosticate. I believe that this vice president and this president are aligned, and that, to me, I'm focused on what's happening among the undecided, the unaffiliated, and the independent, because where they swing will determine who controls Congress, and that in itself will have the biggest impact on who runs and who wins in 2028.
And a group of voters that is watching everything playing out right now very, very closely, with implications for a midterm election that is far, but will be here before we know it. Frank Luntz, appreciate you powering through. Thanks for being here.
Okay. And that. Ooh, that. And actually, do you find the news boring? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. I think it's very interesting about the ebbs and flows with different things. Because the news impact. And like I also want to educate people with the news and not just the news itself, because I think people can make a bigger impact than they think they can do. I also try to give resources to people so they can educate themselves the best they can, or know about to even know what the latest happenings are right now. Like, is the House in session today? I would have to probably double check that. Because like they do. Yeah, no, the House and Senate are both in session today, which makes sense. So I think it could. I am also a fully made. And like, and there's always so much going on. And why do I have because like the other thing I was going to talk about is like the judge just dismissed a lawsuit against Trump against the Wall Street Journal for $20 million. And so like, and yes, I know Trump can basically redo the lawsuit if he wants to do that. But I'm like, it also feels like sort of like a chess game. I think everything that's happening. So I think that's also very interesting as well. But yeah, so I think that's going to be the end of my live stream. If you like what I did, please follow, like, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Also, subscribe if you're on Twitch, that'd be awesome. But thank you for everyone who has joined me today. It means a lot. Oh, I need to make sure I rate someone because I'm a silly head. Thank you. If you care about sparkles, which is the currency of the chat, you get an additional 450 sparkles if you stay through the raid. I also understand if people are busy. And so thank you. It is always good to drink. Thank you for the drink. I will also try to add more predictions in the future so people can start betting with points. Well, no, I guess. Is it betting? Yeah, it's there we go. And I think there's also I do have this set up as well to let people lurk. And then head pats. Head pats are always nice. Okay, I was worried it was not going to disappear for a second there. And not going to do that. Okay. Um. And might do that in the future. Let me think. I guess I'll go here. And there we go.